This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Welcome to 4.0 to Pro, the Pickleball podcast that focuses on a single shot, tip, or strategy to improve your pickleball game with every single pocket-sized episode. Our goal is to make you better on the court every time you hear our voices.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 4.0 to Pro, your pocket-sized pickleball podcast, where we teach you a single shot or strategy every single episode. I'm Michael O'Neill here in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida, joined by my good friend Mircea Marariu, also in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, here at our first 4.0 to Pro camp.
Yes, sir. We are so excited to be here. We love being here at the fort, and we're so honored and grateful that 23 kind, generous souls came out and joined us.
From all over the place.
From everywhere, from San Francisco, Michigan, Pensacola, Alabama, LA, San Diego.
Yeah.
Just so many wonderful people that traveled far, and we had an amazing day of pickleball today. We had a lot of fun. I hope we got a chance to learn a few things and get some competition. We're getting a little more competition tomorrow. We try to do the camp a little bit more differently than this kind of traditional camp where we focus a little bit more on court positioning and strategy, maybe incorporate some drills that are a little bit different than the standard drills. But it's been a lot of fun, and we're just happy and grateful that people are here.
And we'd be remiss not to mention the fort and how amazing their facility has been. The fort is, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's the premier pickleball facility in America right now. An incredible facility. Right now, there's tunes blasting, there's smash burgers happening, full bar is open. We were on the covered courts all day today, away from the Florida sun, not from the Florida heat, and certainly not away from the Florida humidity.
Correct.
But we were away from the sun, and it's been great. And it's probably worth mentioning, we're going to do a Q&A show because we've got our audience right here in front of us. Can we hear a bit from our audience?
Yeah.
Awesome. You guys are amazing, and we're so grateful that you're here. Let's jump right into it.
Absolutely.
That's what we do. When unstacking, who should you return the serve to?
The short answer is it depends. So when you are unstacking and the returner is from the right side, actually, let's back up a little bit. So you generally want to pick a target to return to. You want to return to, ideally, the player that is going to hurt you the least. So you want to pick a target with you and your partner. Most of the time, that will be someone on the right side, and one great target is the person on the right side, their backhand. Often the left side player is typically the stronger player. So if someone has a big forehand in the middle and that left side player will have a forehand, you don't want to return there because that's going to hurt you when you unwind. So someone that is going to put a lot of pressure with a great aggressive drop or a really good aggressive drive, you want to avoid that if you can. That being said, you want to avoid the very sidelines, the 10% on each side of the sidelines you want to avoid. So now we're left with kind of the middle 80% of the court. So when I'm on the right side and I want to unwind the stack, I often return straight ahead because that's often to the person on the left, their backhand, or if they want to run around their backhand, they're a little bit out of position. So that's usually where I return when I'm unstacking on the right side. So I'm returning from the right and I'm trying to get to the left. That's where I'm switching to. If there's a lefty player on the right side, sometimes I return cross court to their backhand because that way if they hit it up the line, it's coming towards me. So that's one thing. Or if they have a weak third shot drop or drive, then I return cross court to the person on the right. If I'm on the left and I'm trying to get across to the other side, I often return middle toward the person on the right's backhand, so towards their left foot. But another good strategy is to return cross-court high, so that way it allows more time for you to get over. So that's another option. So you have a bunch of different options, so it depends on the context. I will tell you that the scenario that often comes up in mixed doubles is when my partner is returning, and she will be returning from the left side. And so a lot of times the traditional thinking is to return down the line so to keep the ball in front of you. However, if the opposing mixed female player has a good cross-court drive or cross-court drop, when the person is unwinding the stack, when my partner is unwinding the stack, that ball is going away from me. So I'm on the right side. My partner's trying to get from the left to the right. So she returns up the line. If that person has a good cross-court drive, if our opponent has a good cross-court drive, that ball is going away from me and away from my partner. So I often want my partner to return more middle or cross-court to give us some time. One, it's a little bit more time because the ball has to travel a longer distance. Or if the opposing male player is going to drive down the line, at least I'm going to be able to pinch middle, and the ball is going to be going towards my partner or towards myself. It's not going away from me. So, again, that's a very long answer to it.
I was going to say, you guys remember that we're a bite-sized podcast, right?
I am, but obviously I'm often not the bite-sized portion. That's you. So.
That's right. One thing I do want to highlight, though, is that probably the most important part is that you hit a high return and give yourselves a chance to unwind no matter where that return is. Giving yourself a little bit, like trying not to just rip it back and give yourself a little bit of time to get there is really good. Beth says, what are the main reasons you miss a shot? I will challenge you to go watch almost any 2.5 to 4.0 and maybe up until 4.5 level game, and you'll see that almost every single missed shot is because they're off balance. Somewhere their footwork wasn't correct, they're hitting off of one foot. Even if they decide to make a shot that they maybe shouldn't, like they're hurrying the shot up instead of stepping back and being balanced and taking the ball, it's almost always because they're hitting off of one limb or they're not balanced or something along those lines.
Yeah, I agree, and we've talked about it at the camp relentlessly, and I feel like a broken record, but it's most often down to court position or footwork. Because if you're not in the right spot, and if you're not balanced, you are going to miss balls. You're not going to be able to hit your sweet spot. And when I'm playing and I miss shots, I'm often a little bit out of position. I'm taking too big of a swing, or my footwork is not great, so I don't allow myself to get the ball to hit the sweet spot of my paddle. So I'm often mentally trying to refocus to not just watch the ball, but to get myself and my paddle in a position where I'm hitting the sweet spot. So again, it depends on the type of shot. When you're missing volleys, a lot of times it's because you're taking too big of a swing. When you're missing dinks, it's again, you're taking too big of a swing, too big of a backswing, too big of a follow-through. But fundamentally, the biggest error that people make is they're not in the proper position or they're not balanced, like you said.
Split step, stable base, take the shot. That's why we were so focused today in our camp on that drill we did where they were mid-court, 5 minutes, next 5 minutes, a couple steps back in the transition zone, then all the way back to the baseline, and not moving through that. Just getting used to what it feels like to be really stable when you hit that shot and seeing how high your consistency goes once you've gone, oh, wait a second, if I'm not running through this shot, I can hit this thing 10 times out of 10.
Exactly. And let's talk about that real quick. The transition zone is another topic in context of missing shots. The most common reason why people miss shots in the transition zone is because they're moving through it.
Yeah.
They're moving through the ball. So when we did our kind of resetting drills, we basically had one person at the kitchen, one person about a third of the way back from the kitchen. And so the person in the transition zone, a third of the way back from the kitchen line, is just standing there resetting balls. So I want everyone to get the feel of being stable, not being forced to move forwards or backwards, to feel how good how good you feel when you're stable and you hit the same shot consistently without worrying to move forwards or backwards. Then we did it when that same person in the transition was about 2/3 back. So we're not worried about moving forwards or backwards, and you can feel that stability, that consistency of hitting the ball where you want it to go. So I thought that was really helpful. That's one of my favorite drills.
I love it as well. What percentage of practice time should be drills versus gameplay? And I'll say that if you play 3 times a week, one of them could be drills, assuming you want to get better. If you play 4 to 5 times a week, you could probably add a second day in there. If you're really trying to advance it, you can even flip that and say, if I'm playing 5 days, 3 of them should be drilling and 2 of them should be playing. You're really only going to get better at pickleball by drilling the shots that you're struggling with over and over again. What we've done here today, a lot of people had never even attempted to hit a counter, and now they just hit 150 of them in a row until they felt, oh, that's what it's supposed to feel like, and now I see how quickly I can do this when I can execute it correctly. That's something you'd never get in a game. Or maybe you would every once in a while, but you maybe wouldn't know the reasoning why you did it correctly, but when you drill, you can do that correctly. So I'm going to say that at least once, if not twice, if you're playing 4 or 5 days a week. But why don't you weigh in on that?
No, I mean, it's individual, but you definitely should be at least a third drilling. And what I would like people to consider is do some drills that you enjoy, make them fun. Because if you are going out there to drill and you're thinking, this is miserable, I hate doing this, but I know I have to, you're not going to get what you need out of it. That's one thing. The other thing is, make sure you're drilling things correctly. Because I've seen it a million times where people go out and drill, and they drill bad habits.
How do they know? How do you know if you're drilling it correctly or not?
The way you know is that if you are doing something in a drill, yet that same shot, let's say dinking, okay? Yeah. You're dinking cross court, you're dinking straight ahead, and then you get in the game, and that breaks down. So it's either one of 2 things. Your dinking drilling is not being solidified, or your technique is incorrect. So ultimately, you need some outside help for that, and that can be your partner, it can be a friend, it can be a pickleball pro that you trust. But when you're doing a drill and you're doing something incorrectly, you can get into the groove when you repeat it enough.
Yeah.
However, when you get in gameplay, and it's 8-all, 7-all, and you're shanking dinks or shanking thirds, there's something going on, and it's usually that your drilling is either not being solidified or you're drilling incorrect technique. So that's something important as well to consider.
So how do you help somebody with the yips? I've told this story many times. My first singles tournament ever, I had 27 service faults in the first 2 games. And I still barely lost, but I did lose. I lost both games. The only thing that has helped me when things get nerve-wracking, when I was on court with all the kind of tier 1 senior pro types, is having a routine for my serve, especially my serve. I think if you're going to get the yips, a lot of times it's on the serve. We've talked about in the past, man, it's 8-8 in an important game 3 in the semifinals. You cannot miss that serve. It is just non-negotiable. Yeah. You have to hit that ball. You got to hit your serve. You got to hit your third. You can't be the one that ends the game because you've missed those things. But man, does it get nerve-wracking. And you go, all right. And I'll say that I'll take away some of my aggressiveness on that serve just to make sure it stays in, because that moment is very important.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a difference between gameplay and rec play and also drilling. But the key is, like you said, for example, on serving, that's the only thing you can control 100% is when you're serving. So a lot of times that affects you more mentally because you have more time to think about it. Otherwise, you're being more instinctive. So taking the serve, for example, you absolutely need a routine. And it can be whatever you choose. Andre Dasku taps the ball on his paddle like 2 or 3 times. Anna Bright or Georgia Johnson, they'll go back and they'll tap the fence. They'll do that sometimes before before serving or before returning. Leah Jansen has her little routine that she does.
Yeah.
So
you know
it's
what I love is when Paris Todd will face the other way, and she will completely reset herself from the previous point, which I also think is really good. Whatever happened previous to her turning around doesn't exist anymore. Now she's playing that next point, which I really like.
And part of that is breath work.
Yeah.
And actually, the classic example, if you read about it, is actually Djokovic. And I actually saw this quite a bit from when I was at tennis tournaments a lot with my younger sister when she was a pro player, that I watched him very carefully, and I noticed that he got really tight and had some difficulty breathing in some of his matches early in his career, and he really worked and focused on breath work, and it's really an important part of his mental reset. So a lot of these clutch players, they're look calm on the outside, but they're nervous and anxious on the inside, and that's how they know they care, yet they've been in that position and they've worked on that as a skill. So you can work on this as a skill. So you go up to serve, you have your routine, you take a deep breath, and you think about something positive. You don't think, okay, I have to get this serve over the net or I'm going to lose this point. You want to think, okay, I want to hit a great serve. You think of something positive. You change the way you approach it. You change that mindset. The other thing is your technique. Is if your technique is faulty and you've gotten the yips, you might need a little help in terms of sorting out your toss,
right?
Sorting out your routine, but going through that. So that's typically what you need to do is work on the mental aspect of it, the routine where you're hitting the same thing over and over again.
You got to remember to trust the work you've done on it. When you go, I do have a routine, I know how to do this thing, let me just trust the routine that I've implemented. That's why you have it. It's like the anchor for yourself. Is there any advantage to changing your grip as you get closer to the non-volley zone? And I'll say, if you asked me this 6 weeks ago, I would have been like, there's probably great scenarios for both. Now that I've started choking up on the paddle as I come closer to the non-volley zone and see the speed in which I can counter the ball, I'm team grip change. Grip change sliding forward, not necessarily changing from like a continental to an eastern or something like that. But I am sliding up a little more on the pedal than I was before.
Yeah, this is tough because one of the beautiful things about pickleball is that you can play it so many different ways.
Yeah.
There's so many people that have different styles, different grips. So the closer you get to the non-volley zone, the shorter your backswing and the shorter your follow-through need to be. A lot of people use a lot of wrist, and part of the teaching that I sometimes do in people that use a lot of wrist is I have them choke up on the paddle to the point where they have 1 or 2 fingers on the face of the paddle. So it's right up at the throat. Because when you do that, like you feel every tiny change in your wrist. So it allows you to feel the paddle better. Allows you to feel the ball much better on the paddle. And then
they don't stay like that, though, do they?
Sometimes people do. If you look at certain players, like Callan Dawson, for example,
he's
really
got a
chokes
wacky
it.
grip. Yeah,
but again, those are kind of unique situations, but they're comfortable and they're good. Look, as long as the ball is going where you want it to go consistently, which is ultimately the goal of what we want to get to, then you can hit whatever grip you like. I don't necessarily change my grip other than I adjust a little bit on softer balls. And with softer balls, you can adjust your grip a little bit more quickly. But what you need to do is when you get to the kitchen and you're having a fast hands exchange or you're getting attacked, you really need to figure out one grip that works for both your backhand and your forehand. Because otherwise it's too hard. You can't switch grips in the middle of a hands battle.
Yeah.
When you're getting attacked, it's really hard to reset from your forehand and your backhand if you're changing that grip. If you want to choke up on it a little bit, then you can. But you lose a little bit of reach, but you get a little bit more, I would say, like solidity in the ball.
Yeah, it feels solid and also quick. You've got some quickness there. What can you say that will get your tennis background partner to stop driving every third shot? How to get through to them? They can listen to our tennis episode. The question is, are they making the third or are they hitting most of them out? That's the real question.
I'm assuming that it's not going well.
It's not going well.
Okay, so now I'm going to make that assumption. This really leads into strategy, and let's just say hypothetically you're playing with a partner and you're not getting up to the kitchen. you really have to talk to each other and figure out why you're not getting up to the kitchen. If your partner has a tennis-style drive and you're getting up to the kitchen because your partner is getting you pop-ups all the time, then it's all good, right?
Yeah.
But if you can't get up to the kitchen on 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th shot drives, okay, we have a problem. So Houston, we have a problem. You can try to communicate, hey, let's try to drop our 5ths, or maybe let's try to drop a 3rd, and your partner say, hey, I'm not comfortable doing that. Okay, both of us stay back. We will drive, and then we'll try to get an easier 5th. You have
But
to
also, maybe they don't know where to drive because they're coming from tennis. They might not know to be driving towards the person that's coming up or something like that. So maybe that could be something you'd say, look, you can stick with your drive. You're hitting enough of them in the court. Let's go to the person that's running up versus the person who's sitting at the net.
Exactly. Or say you're playing against Joe Smith, and Joe Smith has really difficulty countering backhand volleys. Say, okay, let's drive at Joe because we get a soft ball every time we go to his backhand.
Right.
So let's try going to Joe's backhand. So you could just have to gently reframe the strategy and make some suggestions. Or finally, you can say, hey, bro, let's try to drop one.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if we lose the point. Let's just try to drop one, and let's just see what happens. Whatever it is, you need to communicate with your partner. That's what it comes down to. Because if you're not on the same page on how to advance to the kitchen, how to adjust your strategy, you're just going to lose. That's how it is. I had a friend of mine play with a partner, and he said his partner was unable to counter balls, and his partner kept getting driven at. And he said to his partner, hey, can you try countering some of these? Oh, just not really in my skill set. He's okay. We're going to lose.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
All you can do.
I was going to say, too, that sometimes the drop is not in the tennis player's arsenal yet because some of the ways we have to hit a pickleball are just not the same way you'd hit a tennis ball necessarily. But you might frame it like, look, pickleball at this level is one at the kitchen, at the non-volley zone. We're barely ever getting there because of X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. If we try this, if you maybe take your drive and take it from 90% to 40% and let it dip a little bit, we might have a better chance of getting up there.
Yeah.
So, like, you could maybe take advantage of the skills that they have versus the skill that they might not have yet, which is like a nice drop in the middle or to the corner or something like that.
Yeah. One more thing about that is you can also remind them of the concept that the harder they hit the ball, the harder it's coming back. So if you have a 5th shot in the transition zone and you and your partner are not up, or maybe even like a 1/3 of the way up, the harder you hit it, the faster it's coming back and the less you can advance.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't advance on repeated drives unless the drives are great and they're getting you what you want.
What's your perspective on paddle tech evolution? Have they become too hot and powerful? Should regulatory bodies exercise stronger guidelines in testing? I think they already are. I think they're taking the hotter paddles and taking them off the market. I'm of the mindset that they're probably good right now, and when they're a little more powerful, it does feel like when I'm playing against a mod or some of the early Yola paddles or the early gearbox, that it almost felt like there was an unfair advantage to whoever had that paddle.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that they are a little bit too hot, too powerful right now. It's changed the game, I think, to the detriment. And this is coming from someone that loves to hit the ball hard, and it actually benefits my game to have hotter paddles. But I really enjoy the complexity of pickleball. I enjoy the dinking aspect and the speeding up and the counters and figuring things out in the puzzle. And when it comes down to the first 4 to 6 shots, it's not as fun. So
right.
Like when the mods were in vogue and they were all available and I would play a game with 3 guys with mods, the points were all 5 seconds or 10 seconds at the most.
And they didn't have to be that good. Like, the paddle gave them advantages that their skill sets didn't account for yet.
Yeah. But it wasn't that I was losing. It was just that they would make an error or hit a winner. So
right.
Fortunately, the governing bodies are aware of this and they're implementing better testing. And they initially had the idea of we're going to limit the types of materials and the amount of grit, and they didn't look at the end result. So the end result is how fast the ball can come off the paddle regardless of the type of construction materials, or how much spin the paddle can generate regardless of how much grit there is. So now they're changing the standards and evolving to more performance-based standards. What are the RPMs? What's the deflection of the paddle? What's the PB core, which is a coefficient of, basically tells you how fast the ball is coming off the paddle. So these are all things that I've actually had a bunch of conversations with both Jason Asbest of the UPA and Carl Schmidt of the USAP, and they are doing the testing. And there's actually a lab in Boca, the PPL lab, that has done a lot of the testing. And even along those lines, like how much weight should be allowed to be added to a paddle, because that changes the performance. So there's a lot of issues that have yet to be determined, but the governing bodies are aware of it and are attempting to address it. So I'm glad about that.
And even smaller companies like Carbon, and we have to give Carbon a shout out because they were amazing to provide so much stuff for our camp here this weekend. But they have state-of-the-art testing right on site, so they can test their own paddles and make sure they're compliant as well.
They've been amazing. They provided so much gear. They provided the balls, the ball hoppers, numerous hats, just a ton of gear.
Yeah.
We're really grateful to Carbon for helping us out and providing all these great things for our campers.
What are the benefits of drilling with a machine versus a partner? Now, I happen to be someone who really enjoys a ball machine afternoon. But to an extent, if I'm working on a very specific shot, let's say I want to learn a flick, and I take the time to set the machine up exactly where I want it, I can just get 100 of those in a row and get it until my mechanics feel the right way, or I'm trying to reshape a drive or learn a TUI or something like that. Things that a drilling partner, even one of your best friends, would be so bored hitting you the exact same shot 100 to 200 times, where a drilling machine doesn't matter at all. But when you need something more dynamic, when you want more accurate gameplay, once you've gotten the mechanical skills, that's when I would want a partner, because I'd want some variable in the shots that I'm being fed so I can adjust and move my footwork and now bring that shot out in a real-world situation.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I typically don't use drilling machines just because I love the community and social aspect of pickleball, enjoy playing with people and hanging out with friends, and just made so many tremendous friends from this great sport that we all love. But you hit the nail on the head. Basically, if you want to hit a specific shot where you get 100 balls the same way, if you want to hit a backhand flick and you want to try to get the ball machine to have it consistently hit you the ball below the net, like that's the shot.
And it's going to be hard to get a buddy to hit that same consistency anyway.
Exactly.
I start the point with a grip that lets me hit a lot of topspin, serve, return of serve, third shot, drive, or drop. As I move more to the kitchen, I switch to a continental grip. If I have to retreat, e.g. due to opponent's good lob, should I go back to my baseline grip? Now, I do something very similar. I don't do it all the time, but sometimes I'll switch to a really, I guess it's the Eastern, to get a ton of topspin on a third shot drive. Or sometimes I'll serve. If I always joke and say, this is my Kwang Duong serve, and I'll really go this flat, crazy, spinny ball. And very often I'll hit the next topspin drive like that, and it's great. But then I switch to a continental, and I live in the continental after that. I don't typically switch back to it if I were to get a lob, though. I probably stick to continental personally.
In the context of a lob, again, it depends on what kind of shot you're hitting. So if you want to hit more of a drive, you can change it back to your, quote, baseline grip so you get some topspin. When I get lobbed and I can't hit it in the air, there's usually two shots that I prefer. One is another lob, a very high defensive lob just right in the middle. It's particularly effective outside when your opponents are looking into the sun, but it also allows you and your partner time to readjust your position. So whenever you're in trouble, that's a good general concept to remember. The softer you hit it, the more you float the ball, the more time you and your partner have to get back into the point. The other shot that I typically try to hit is a drop off that lob. So again, it depends on the kind of shot that you're trying to hit. So if you're most comfortable from the baseline with a certain grip, sure, go back to that grip because you have time to adjust in the context of a lob. When you can't go back and forth is, again, when you're being attacked or you're in a hands battle. So then you have to stick and choose the best grip for you.
So Roy asks, if I'm serious about getting better, how important is it to develop a two-handed backhand? And I'm not sure if we differ on this or not. I don't know, do you have a two-y?
I don't very often. I occasionally do, but it's not that common.
You don't have a two-y cross-court dink, correct?
I don't, but on occasion I can.
Okay. Speaking from my own personal experience, it was one of the things that elevated my game to the next level. All of a sudden, I had a new toy to play with, and I had new options, especially if I was on the left-hand side, and I was starting to curl these balls at angles I could never hit with one hand. You know how sometimes people do that, the Ben Johns thing where he switches to that fully Eastern and rolls over? He does it a lot when he's doing cat and mouse in singles. I had that then now in doubles for two-handed dinks, and that was great. If you play some singles, I think it's going to be a little more difficult. Did you have a full 1E in singles as well?
I did. It's funny because I grew up playing tennis, and I had a two-handed backhand. My game style was similar to Agassi's.
Agassi, yeah,
with
same.
a two-handed backhand. But then I played squash for 25 plus years, and so everything with the squash is like a slice drive, so I kind of lost my two-handed backhand. I don't think you necessarily need to I think if you're serious about getting better, you maximize the skills you have, but then you add other things. And definitely if you don't have a two-handed backhand, it is one of the additional things you can have in your arsenal or armamentarium. I know you like big words, Michael.
Ooh.
So you can add that to your armamentarium.
Armamentarium. Let's go.
So the more options you have, the better off you can manipulate the ball or be deceptive. That being said, don't lose sight of what you need to improve on the most. Don't add a two-handed backhand if you can't dink on either side, okay?
Right.
You got to focus on the forest overall. Look at the big picture rather than focusing on the leaves. So you really need to assess your own game. I think it's a great tool to have, and I need to work on that a little bit more, is to add that to my arsenal so I can speed up a little bit more with two hands off the bounce.
I've got you, baby.
Backhand.
I can teach that
I need some lessons.
in an hour.
One thing to remember about the two-handed backhand in pickleball is that in tennis, when you have a two-handed backhand, your right-hand player, your right hand is dominant and the left hand kind of guides it, all right? In pickleball, especially when you're at the kitchen, you want the left hand to be more dominant and the right hand kind of guides it. So that's something to keep in mind when you're working on a two-handed backhand in pickleball. It's a very important concept to remember.
And we can work on it. If anybody wants to, we can work on it tomorrow, perhaps. I'm going to cherry pick a question that we've had in our little notes here because it's so you. Hi, Michael. Thanks for the show. I'm a big fan. Been listening since the beginning. I'm 4-0-ish. Been playing about 3 years without any prior racket sport experience. I would love to hear a show on the triangle principle and how to use it to set up patterns. I'm curious if/how it changes when I'm playing left side with a lefty partner. If this isn't its own topic, then a broader show on strategy and patterns would be appreciated. Is this concept I'm speeding up to someone's hip and then it's coming back the opposite? Is that more of the triangle, or is it more about focusing both of your efforts on one person?
You can look at it both ways. And by the way, how much time do we have? Do we have another 2 hours on the pod, or is that not? It's not bite-sized anymore.
Should we do a whole show?
It's not bite-sized anymore.
Yeah, this is our last questions.
I will try to be succinct if I can. I don't know if that's possible,
I'm not
though.
sure.
I don't know. I'll do my best.
We'll do the Twitter version, and then we'll do a full show on it.
I think for most people, you would think of this in the concept of speeding up. So if I'm on the left side and I have, let's say, a forehand that I can attack or instigate, I would basically try to attack straight at the backhand of the person in front of me. And what I'm trying to generate is a deflection over to my partner or over to the middle. So I would speed up, that person would counter over to the middle, and then my right side partner would put that away if they're a lefty with their forehand or if they're a righty with their backhand. So that's the triangle that you're trying to create. If you're on the right side, let's say I have a forehand on the right side and I speed up at the body or the paddle side body of the person directly across from me, which is the left side player, then I'm trying to get a deflection towards the middle for my left side player, my left side partner's forehand.
Okay.
So that's the other triangle. And another way you can look at it is in terms of the potential shot making that someone can have depending on their body position and where the ball is. And what I mean by that, I call it a wedge, but you can think of it as a triangle. So let's say for the sake of argument that I'm on the left side, I have a forehand dink that I'm trying to hit, and my hips are turned towards my partner, so towards my right side partner.
Yep.
All right? So
You're facing towards the other side's left side player.
yeah. So if someone is standing behind me, they can see a wedge or triangle of where I can potentially hit the ball successfully. So if in the context of a speed up,
Yeah.
all right? So say I speed up inside out, so basically to the left side of the left side player. If I speed up from their shoulder over, that's going out. So that's the sort of right side of that wedge or triangle.
So your wedge is really like from maybe middle or their right foot, that left side player, and then the person directly in front of you, maybe their left foot.
Yeah, so maybe
that range is about your wedge.
Exactly. And then the left side of the triangle might be directly in front of me at the right side player.
Right.
Because if I go all the way to my left, it's unlikely because my hips are turned
Yeah,
and
it's
my
hard to
right
wrap that
shoulder
ball
is
around.
back.
Yeah.
Plus they have the sideline, so the right side player has the sideline to the right of them. So that's another sort of triangle, or I call it the wedge. So you've predicted within a reasonable degree of probability, like a 30 to 40% of size of the court or wedge or slice of pie or triangle where the ball's going. So you don't have to worry about certain things. Like the right side player doesn't have to worry about their forehand. They can just sit backhand.
So
Sense?
yeah, so if there's like a dead dink and you're the left side player on the other side, like you can see the ball's coming, you can start eliminating some spots. Oh, this is not going to go to the left. If it's anywhere chest and above, it's probably going out. If it's anywhere to my left side, it's probably going out. If it's really far to the other side, it's probably going out. So now I know I have just some semblance of what I should cover.
Exactly. And this will improve your court positioning. If your court positioning is proper, this helps you cover all the bases, if you will, and then anticipate the shot. So it helps you in two ways, and it greatly improves your ability to play defense.
Are you sitting forehand if you're that left side player on the opposite side?
I'm leaning forehand.
Are you daring them to go across the middle or attack you?
I'm leaning forehand. Or
Yeah.
if they've gone inside out to my right side already, I might slide a little bit to my right and sit like a backhand counter. But in that context that we're describing, generally I'm sitting
You're probably
more
sitting
forehand.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. The other time I've heard a kind of a triangle is if I attack the person right in front of me. Let's say I'm the right side player, and I attack their right hip, and they counter. It's almost, and I hit it with a forehand. It's almost always coming to my backhand. Yep. It's almost always the opposite shot that you led from. Is that your experience?
Yes, that's why I mentioned that before when I was talking about attacking from the right side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like you're that way, and then you can basically anticipate with your paddle the next ball. It's kind of like a windshield wiper.
Yeah. One other additional triangle concept is basically if you and I are playing and we have an opponent on, for example, on the right side, and we think of a triangle where we want to hit the ball. So the point or the peak of the triangle is basically at that player. So we're trying to keep the ball in that triangle, so we're eliminating the left side player.
You're isolating that person, right?
Exactly. So that's another concept.
That's probably a whole show on isolating a person as well. Because if someone's playing really big, especially in mixed, and they're causing you some problems, you might want to head, or there's two guys, and one of the guys is 6'4" and really big in the middle. You're playing against Andre Dascu, and he's got a partner who's maybe not as intimidating or as wide, you might try to isolate that other, and that's where that triangle comes in.
Absolutely.
All right, done, guys. This is our first live show that we've ever done. Isn't that fun?
It is. So we've done a few in person, and this is our first live one. And
Yeah, it's been a little minute.
I love it.
Cool.
Thank you so much for being here. Love you guys. That's awesome.
Thank you, guys. And you've now just listened to another episode of 4.0 to Pro. As always, please go enjoy some pickleball courts. Thank you once again to Carbon Pickleball. If you'd like to get a carbon paddle, it's carbonpickleball.com. Use the promo code 402P at checkout for 10% off and enjoy their new True Foam paddles. And go enjoy some courts. Go enjoy some pickleball. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to 4.0 to Pro. For more tips, find us on Instagram at 4.0 to Pro. If you have a pickleball question, submit it at picklehelp.com. Now, get out there and dominate. But don't forget to have fun.